What's that? Family, somebody said?
Yeah, family, friends.
That's a good one.
Being able to speak your mind.
I like it. I like
Being
it.
yourself and not actually wearing a mask just for the
Uh,
sake of falling into that niche or that clique, and then just being accepted for who you are, no judgment.
Flor, you are always so deep and you always like really, really, dive in there. I love you. You're great. Thank you. Don't stop doing that. Great job.
Okay, thank
And
you.
anyone else?
Sometimes I think it's too much.
No, I want you to go deeper. How about that? I want you to go deeper.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
In fact,
I
Flor,
was
how about
thinking,
this? Huh?
I was thinking fire extinguisher.
A fire extinguisher. I like that. You know you're gonna have Marcelo challenge there. Marcelo's gonna struggle with some of those things. Okay, don't. He's gonna overwhelm this beautiful picture. I don't think Marcelo can add more. Is that a flashlight, Marcelo? What's that person doing?
It's a mask.
Is that a mask? Is that what that is? That's a big mask. Okay. Okay, I got you.
Looks like Mardi Gras.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. So again, welcome. I hear some more clicks, some more people are joining us. I do apologize. My back is hurting, so I'm in a weird position. So if you see me slanted, don't think that I'm going to see if I can adjust it a little bit better, but I'm not doing too well with my back. Hopefully I can warm it up.
oh, Rick, man,
around.
I've been having back issues last month, man. See if you can try to stretch and ice and heat and
And
walk.
it's one side, So
Yeah.
I was trying to sleep on the other side to see if it moves a little bit, but no.
Try.
You know what also helps, and it's homeopathic. You take your organic coconut oil, you mix it in with or they have to be the organic doTERRA brand
Serum.
oils. No, it has
No rum.
rosemary, lavender. It's 4 different type of oils. I put it on my finger, especially when I do yoga. Takes a lot of it's a lot of strain on my wrist, and I put it on before, and there's also mint. I'll send you the recipe.
All right, I'll do
okay?
it. I'll follow all exact recipe. Okay,
And
I'll follow it.
it's completely, there's no chemicals.
All right.
Anybody have an inversion table? Some vodka. You guys trying an inversion table?
Vodka. And I don't even drink, but I'm going to start drinking. I know that's weird for people. Rick doesn't drink. Yeah, he doesn't drink.
There you go. If you have enough drink, you'll forget all about your back pain.
All right, guys. So again, welcome. I really appreciate it. I know that this is like, for me, it's a family. We have this every Wednesday. So I'm so happy that Marcelo's been doing an amazing job also bringing great speakers here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I think somebody needs to unmute.
So, Nelu, can you help me with muting a few people?
Yep, I already muted him.
Yeah.
I know Rocky is in mute right now, but you might want to mute him also. No, I'm just kidding, Rocky. So
I'm not mute, man.
Rocky and I go way, way back. Again, I appreciate you guys coming over. We've been doing this for a long time, so it's very, uplifting to see so many people still engaged, still trying to figure it out, and we're all trying to work together. That's really encouraging. It kind of helps me go through my day as well. It really motivates me to see so many great people out there. So this is SFAA. I am the president of the South Florida Agile Association. And we've been doing this since 2013, I believe. That's a long time. We actually started with like 4 people just in a small little room. And then it just started growing. And, we've been able to do great things for the community for a long time now. So Pleasant, thank you guys for showing up. We have this Wednesday and we also have it on Saturday. Yes, I represent Transformation Experts as well. We do training. So if you guys are interested in training, we are doing every single training out there. When it comes to Agile, we're there. whether it's the CAL, which is the Certified Agile Leader, to the CSM that Marcelo does an amazing job with Kanban and all those great things too, whether it's looking into SAFe and all the other SAFe things, we have that for you. So if you're interested, please let us know. We're here to help you. But we also give a lot back to the community. This is one of our ways we give, and on Saturday we do it as well. Saturday, like I tell many people, it's not just a meeting, it's an experience. You're out there learning, talking to people, and you actually have different sessions that you can go to. So if you're new to it, we mentioned some people moving into this career, we have a session just for you. Beginners, you get to talk about, I have no freaking idea what the product owner does. I have no idea what a Scrum Master really does. And they get to talk to you and work you through that, right? Same thing for advanced users. You want to talk about advanced topics, you want to be engaged, well, come in there and you'll hear some of the other coaches really get you. We even have we have Art, which is an amazing coach. And I don't know if he's there, I'm looking around, it's hard for me to see everyone that's on the line, but he's also supports people. Like if you want one-on-one coaching, he's going to be there for you as well. 2 other sessions that are really cool. We have a Spanish session that we have for people that want to speak Spanish and go through Agile. That's beautiful. And also we have now as well, we're building out a product. So how many people say, I have no freaking experience in Agile? Well, guess what? You go over there and you get actual real world experience where we're going to be producing a product. Andres, you got to hear this one. You're going to like this one. That Scrum Masters and Agile coaches can use. So it's going to be an app, we're figuring that out, but imagine a product where they can actually use on a regular basis that gives them what they need to be successful. So that's a pretty cool thing that we could put our label behind it. So I do represent transformation experts. I'm pleased and humbled to help today. Are we ready? Is there anything else missing before we kick it off?
Wait a minute, Rick.
Wait, somebody just joined.
What was that, Marcelo? How much does it cost?
Yeah, how much does it cost?
Wait. Can I answer?
No, you cannot answer it, Joe. You cannot go there, Joe.
Wait. Yes, I can answer because it's my birthday and you're going to let me.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Joe. Okay, but just this once. Just this once.
It's free as in beer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Best birthday ever.
Joe.
Happy
Happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you. I had
I
to
was
sneak
trying
that
to
one.
say I invited somebody from Florida right there to join today, so I think she's here now. So I just didn't know if she got herself introduced.
Well, welcome. Who is she? Godwin?
Modupe.
Modupe, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
All right.
Right. So now I know how much this is costing us, Rick. So go for it.
This is a lot, guys. All right. So again, I am experimenting with a couple things here. I'm trying this iPad just to see if I can have a little bit more zooming in and zooming out. So I'm going to share that part. I think, Marcelo, you're sharing right now, so I'm going to have to overwrite your sharing. So share screen. Okay, so you should see my iPad right now.
Yep.
Right, and I am trying to get to my. So this is a product that many of you maybe used it. It's Miro. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes, we can see it.
So the whole idea that it helps me actually zoom in a little bit since I'm using an iPad. It allows me to work through it a little bit if I'm having a discussion. So yes, you're at our free event. And my name is Rick Regueira. I'm here to help you through this process. But I don't work that way. I hate one-directional conversations. I get very bored very quickly. So you'll see that people are going to be able to chime in. We do have to be very respectful of each other. There is a lot of people on the bridge. But at least we might have some sessions there where we actually put a jam board together and have some feedback. So the discussion is about retrospectives. And I'm trying to understand a little bit of how much you guys have worked with retrospectives, just to kind of gauge where you guys are at. So I think the first question I would ask, and you guys can just put it in the chat channel right now, is how many people think that they're new to retrospectives, intermediate or advanced retrospective facilitators, right? I'm curious, where do we feel we stand when it comes to retrospectives, right? So I'm gonna do that at first, just to kind of get a feedback of it. And Marcelo, of course, I'm gonna call on you to help me out through the chat if you can. Just kind of what do we have out there? What are we feeling? This helps me as a person who facilitates a lot. I do constantly look for feedback so I can see how I pivot throughout my presentation. I know people don't like that sometimes. They're like, but you said you're gonna go through all this. And sometimes you have to work through it because you're trying to listen to your audience, right? So how are we getting out? What are we getting out there, Marcelo?
Well, we've got mostly intermediates. I've got a couple of beginners and one or two advanced. Now, I know that somebody was asking, how do you gauge intermediate and advanced? Yeah. Well, Rick, what do you think?
Oh, go ahead, answer the question, Marcelo. I'm gonna put you in. I'll put you in the spot.
You're gonna throw me under the bus. Not a problem. Well, how I would gauge intermediate advances, how often you've screwed it up. How often you think you've screwed it up and you've learned something from it. Okay. An indication of how you advance is how often you screw up and you learn. So for the person who asked that, ask yourself, okay, how many times have I learned something out of a retrospective? There's your indication.
Wow, I love that one, Marcelo. Good job. Again, it's relative. So all we're trying to do is get a gauge, and it's what you feel. Hey, are you in the middle, or do you feel like there's a lot to learn? Okay, maybe you're so it's just a gauge. So we got what, half? What do we got? So you're saying kind of some middle. Does any advanced? Did you see any advanced people out there?
One person considers himself advanced.
Okay, awesome.
Okay,
awesome.
Now two.
Okay, all right, that's awesome. That's awesome. Great. Thank you very much. So moving to the next slide real quick. So this whole idea that I work with organizations and retrospectives, I think there's a foundation that needs to be established. It's this whole continuous improvement mindset, right? You need to make sure that you can grow and you can learn and you can learn new things, right? So you got to make sure you have that foundation. And sometimes when we do transformations, that's really the foundation. And then we say, okay, to get a continuous improvement, you really need to have many retrospectives. You need to have a lot of feedback to have that. But you can't really have good retrospective if you don't have a safe environment. Like, what kind of retrospectives are you going to have out there if you don't really have a safe environment? That just doesn't make sense. And then the idea was, well, how do you have a safe environment? Well, if you think of the 5 dysfunctions of the team, which I know Joe loves to mention, the 5 dysfunctions of the team. Joe, tell me, what's the 5 dysfunctions of the team, sir?
Love it. So you guys can hear me?
Yes.
So first one's trust. And then,
healthy conflict.
Trust, safe environment. What do you call it?
Trust, conflict.
Accountability, commitment, and
fear of conflict.
And then all those things build a high-performing team. So trust is the foundation, and you want to have a safe and open environment for people to speak. Once you get that, then you look for commitments, and then you hold each other accountable to be able to perform and deliver.
I love it. And the idea behind that, again, you can't have healthy conflict if you don't have trust, right? You can't have that discussion. Imagine you guys going into a conflict that you don't have trust. What's going to happen? What are some of the things that will happen? Imagine you guys going into a conflict without having trust. Who wants to share a personal experience that you went out to a conflict that you did not have trust with that person?
We see that a lot in people like, you've seen even Warren Buffett, when he is dealing with people that has built the trust up with them, the negotiations go much faster, right? Because there's some sort of trust. And you can see even on a national scale, if we don't, the Chinese don't trust us, and as a Communist Party doesn't trust us, we don't trust them. So we don't, we really should be pretty careful about what we do with them, right?
Love it. So if I didn't trust somebody, I would go into a conflict with protecting myself, with only thinking about my side to make sure that I can, and thinking strategically, okay, I know this person's going to say that, so how am I going to counter-react that? Okay, and I'm not even listening to them. I'm just ready for my rebuttal, right? I'm going to tell them this after that. Okay, I'm going to hit them with this. It's a war. It's not a conversation. I'm not really trying to listen to them. I'm really trying to share that this is what I mean by that. So it's difficult to move beyond that until you establish that. Great. So that's the high level, so that we understand that. But I want to go step back a second, just because there's definitions of retrospectives, and this was one that they came out of that. First of all, there's different names for retrospectives. I came up with a couple of them: lessons learned, post-mortem, or let's just talk. What other names are out there for retrospectives when you hear it in the industry? Have you heard of any other name that's out there?
Post-mortem.
Post-mortem, yeah, I've heard that.
Safe uses inspect and adapt.
Inspect and adapt, I like that. Okay,
Root cause
awesome.
analysis.
Root cause analysis, I love that one too. Good job. So when I think of retrospectives, I know we all have this agile community, but I don't want you to think of it just as in retrospectives that we run with teams. And this is a very popular one, like the start, stop, and continue, if you see that on the left, right? But I want you to think of retrospectives, and I want you to think about running it with more than just the teams. So take a look at that. I retrospect with myself. Yeah. Floor, I know you do too. I felt it. You self-analyze yourself.
I do.
Absolutely. I know it. You retrospect with a team, with your team. You retrospect. Imagine how many of you guys have done retrospectives of teams? Some of you guys said.
So Rick, I go even deeper. Not only a retrospect, but an introspect.
Whoa, I love it. Good job. Yes. Good job. So some of the advanced users, have you had the opportunity to retro teams of teams?
No.
Anybody want to share an experience of retroing a team of teams and how that went? Okay, some of you said you were advanced, so I'm going to put you on the spot. You're not going to get away from me.
Question. So, can you guys hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. So typically, Scrum Masters have one team, two teams, and we always fall into the cadence of having a retro for it, for that specific team at the end of the sprint. But when would the situation come up, or the need to have a retro for a team of teams? So I guess that's something that I've never seen.
I love it. Who can help me answer? That's not a coach. That means Marcelo, you can't speak. I want to hear other people. Go ahead.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So USA, we have what they call the pod system. So it's like pod A, B through C. So in insurance, PNC, so I had pod A, B, and C. And so they are both in auto, policy, and claims. And so I run the retro for the three teams together because most of our work are all aligned. So instead of having one Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I just run the three teams together and we have the same board and we take different action items and put it in different teams. So
that might be a case. So that might be a case that you have several teams that are kind of interacting in a certain way, and then there'll be some benefits behind, hey, how are we interacting? How are we sharing? Ideally, in a perfect world, we don't have to, right? We can do it all within our pockets, but that's not necessarily reality. So imagine you retrospecting with a different department, like HR, or a different group that interacts with your group. There's some really good, cool wins behind that. Make sense?
Yeah.
Anybody else that's done a team? Yeah. Anybody else that's done a team-to-team retro?
Yeah. Well, in a different industry, but it was a lessons learned, like a debrief. I guess debrief is what it was. I think the challenges there is the size and being on, and it boils down to relationships, which I think you're going to get into. Just having the right relationships. You guys talked about trust. and you want to try to balance out the challenges with the accomplishments. So
I love that suggestion you just made. It's about taking away people and saying, look, let's just focus on what the issue is, right? Because when you make it all personal, it gets a little bit out of hand. So that's great. That's a start that you guys have had a chance to do retrospective team of teams. But now I'm going to move next level. How about retrospective across peers? Like when I think of peers, it's not just the team itself, but it's some of the leaders going across and retrospecting with other leaders. Has anybody had an experience of retrospecting across leaders? And I know Marcelo's had a lot of experience. That's why I'm keeping him quiet, but I'm just wanting to get other people. I'm sorry, Marcelo, I love you, just so you know. But I'm just
got a question.
Yes.
Would you normally want to do that in like kind of like a smaller groups and kind of have it bubble up another? Because it seems like people's level of trust with people they worked with would be pretty good in the 5 to 6 or 7 sort of size group, and then maybe you sum that up and maybe you get together with another group that's done that, and you kind of maybe have true confession of what things you learned between the groups. Would that be a model that would work pretty well?
So when you're talking about teams of teams, maybe picking up a smaller group to get that information, I'm trying to understand what specifically, because they might not feel comfortable speaking all in one big group. Is that where your concern is?
Yeah, you might have 5 or 6 people together do a retrospective for the thing you're working on. Another 5 or 6 would had another responsibility. But when you start to, if you had 25 or 50 or people in a room, that might get to be, it might get to be a diverse response, I guess. And then
so I love what you're saying, and you're thinking through it really good, because there is a very awkward feeling to have too many people in a room. And I'll show you some of the tricks that I use. And then it could be too much information, too much overload. And are we really being productive, or is it just going to be one group against another group? And so if you're envisioning one group fighting another group, then we already set the wrong stage. If you're envisioning us being all together to figure it out and to be able to be hyper focused on what's really bothering us across these two groups, that's a very pleasant view. So that's why one of the most important things that I do is to make sure I facilitate it properly to set the foundation, the working agreements that say this is what we're trying to get out of this. It's not about our fighting, it's about us getting better every time. But I don't do it every time. It's just also when the need comes in as well. But there is great science or great, you mentioned several ways that will still work, and you need to test them out. Don't just go with what I say. It's whatever you feel your organization's ready for. Awesome. All right. So I just want to keep going down this list to let you know that there's more than just, so you got retrospectives across your peers. You got retrospect your boss. How about that? Do the opposite. Have you ever had a chance to retrospect your boss? Uh-oh, we got a hand going up. Go ahead.
That's I've had that in the positives and the negatives. So you be very, you need to have your facts in line. You need to make sure that, again, I think you were hitting on it earlier. You got to separate the behavior from the person, or the challenge from the individual. That builds trust. I mean, there's times that throughout you can be in a lot high stressful situation. Things got to happen, but if you overstress the team, nothing happens so it was one of those. I've been in that situation, and we had a pretty good conversation about it. But it boiled down to just make sure that you really think through how that conversation is going to go, and
so that's
and make sure that how you're addressing. And I would say one thing too is that when you have those conversations, and I had a few of those in the last couple of years, make sure that the objective is that not just to hey, look, we got to get this done. How can I understand, or how can I better, if you're a leader, how can I better convey this to the team? If you're the guy, if you're in the lead position, like a scrum master or any other leadership role, one way to turn this around when it gets really hot is say, look, I'm having a hard time understanding this, and I'm going to be the face meeting the team. I don't want to be the person that's, I want to support the direction that you've set. I want to really understand what you're trying to get at. How can I convey that more effectively?
Love it. Love it. again, that is very courageous, very difficult to do. And, you know, I praise you guys. Remember, many times we got to coach upward. How do we do that? What is our strategy behind it? Are you having those conversations? You don't want to be surprised. You want to make sure you set your expectation. You want to make sure you understand your boss, you know, and that they understand you. Hopefully, you model the right behavior that you could actually help your boss also model that behavior, right? But great job, great job. So going higher up, have you ever retrospect meetings? I highly recommend that after every meeting, you sit down and you say, hey guys, what went well, what didn't go well? That's a very strong, passionate conversation to at least know that you're getting better. Some of you play agile. They play agile. When you're really agile, you want this kind of data. You ask for that data, okay? So you need to look for opportunities to say, this meeting, let me give you some, let's have a quick retro. Every time I do an event, I always grab the team right after and say, talk to me. Where did we go? What did we do? Even if everything went really well, I still want to understand some of that feedback. Make sense?
Yeah.
And then the last one that I've done heavily is, have you ever had a retro? Have you ever run an organizational retrospect? Like a big department retrospect, a town hall meeting retrospect? Who has had some you know, knowledge in that area? So what are some tricks that we can use if you were asked tomorrow to run something like that? What are some things that maybe you want to do? What were some things that you might recommend?
You gotta do a survey. You gotta do a survey, a quantitative survey or qualitative survey.
I love the idea. I love the idea, Rocky, of doing something that at least technology-wise, you can grab a lot of data at the same time, because there's no way you're going to be able to parse that out and be effective fast enough. So I love that. Good job, Rocky. Anything else that you recommend?
Something that's not at that level, but I've seen that built trust was that the retrospects, we used to have retrospects in our group every week pretty much. And people would because we had our stand-ups every day, they would kind of recognize the good that others did in the group. And as we started, one thing I noticed was as we started to do that, it built trust over time because other people were recognizing good attributes about what happened and bringing those up. And after a while, people started to trust and also be willing to admit that, you know, in this particular thing, I didn't do as well as I'd like. And people would, you know, maybe kind of temper that a little bit too, if they're being too hard on themselves. I know that's a more at a lower level than a town hall, but that did seem to be pretty effective for building trust, which is very important for all of us.
But let me piggyback on what you just said. One of the things that I do when I help transform a company, one of the first things that I do is I actually have a town hall meeting, and I work with the C-levels to show their vulnerabilities at the town hall meeting. That's one of the toughest things to execute, but it opens the door to people feeling comfortable having more conversations. So I actually have them do an exercise where they say, these are some of the things I didn't do that well this month. Imagine you going to a town hall meeting and your top executive, your CEO, says, these are things that didn't work. This is the way I thought it was did not work out the way I planned it to, and this is how I'm going to improve. What kind of stage are you setting in your organization if you see that? Honesty. So then you have, so this is what happens. He says it. It was a he in this situation. Does not always have to be a he. He says it, and then his leaders now step up and say it. Whoa, now you're talking. So if you're there in the Gimba and you're looking at this, you're like, wow. I mean, they might have not said of everything, but that they said something is an interesting conversation. Somebody was saying something? All right. Has anybody ever seen that? Can anybody share the most vulnerable C-level view that they've ever seen? Like, have they ever observed any amazing experience of humble professional at the C level. This is scary if nobody speaks.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna be,
sure.
Talk to me.
Hi, Rick.
Hey, go ahead, talk to me.
All right. So when I was at IBM and I was working with a group that would direct reports to the CIO, they had all the financial, general ledger, all the financial systems throughout the company, in addition to real estate and a bunch of other things. And the guy who runs it, he's just great. And he was always humble. He had retrospectives monthly with all his directs. And we did maturity assessments and spiders. And the thing that he focused on, the most important thing to him of everything he looked at, was innovation. And instead of the metrics and the velocity and all those other things, he talked to them about, are you making time for your people to innovate? And he went around the room and everybody had a chance to talk, and they would talk about what they were trying and what worked and what didn't work. And there was nothing formal, there was nothing on a board. And it was just an awesome experience.
That's awesome. Thank you, Art. Great job. Anyone else that can share any type of leader that you saw say something that really, really like opened your mind to like, wow, that's a leader. So again, it's shocking to me that we don't hear more, you know? So I'm a little like iffy now because I really want you guys to experience also leaders that are out there making, you know, making real changes. Has anyone else heard of any leader? How about that you haven't been a part of, but maybe you heard out in the industry? Who are the famous leaders out there that are you know, pushing the envelope?
They're all you know, mega millionaires in tech startups.
I was to say, how about Elon Musk? He shows every rocket failure.
All right. All right. All right. So this is one area of focus that I want to make sure you understand, that when we're retrospecting, first of all, I want you to understand that it's all the time. When you're in a stand-up meeting, you should be thinking about retrospecting, right? There's a concept there. When you have your you know, when you're pairing with somebody, you're actually retrospecting. There's conversation, there's learnings. So you need to make sure you work through this well. So let's talk about what a retrospect looks like. Okay, let's walk through and let's simulate what a retro. So who normally, in Agile, we have, okay, the Scrum Master, right? So, but in life, anybody can run the retro, right? So how does it start? Who can walk me through a normal retrospect and share what happens in this meeting? Let's understand it first. Who wants to talk to me about a retrospect? And I don't want to release Marcelo. Once he goes, Marcelo, talk to me. Once I let Marcelo go, then we're done. He's the professor. The professor comes in.
What?
I can.
Go ahead. Talk to us.
Sure. So just kind of going back to what you said earlier, you have to start with the working agreements. Just make sure that everyone in the room feels safe. Just kind of make that known. Sometimes the teams like the product owner to be there. Sometimes they don't. So once that is set, you go in and you discuss things. I guess you create this list. I personally like to use Fun Retro, and you make a couple of columns. One is things that went well within your last sprint, things that didn't go so well. And then we also like to have an extra column, which we call like a kudos, to kind of like call people out, people that have kind of gone up above and beyond. And then once we discuss everything, the team collectively votes on the top to maybe 3 things that we'd like to work on. And then we assign those to people to make sure that those get completed as a part of the retro.
All right. So anybody want to add to that?
I have a question about something you said.
He said a couple things. I'm letting it simmer there because it's his shop, so I don't want to make sure I don't influence him the way I see it. But
sure.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, you mentioned sometimes they don't like having the product owner there. Tell me why.
It just depends. I've only seen it one case at a previous job where either the product owner didn't want to be there because he didn't want to hear all the criticism, or the relationship wasn't the best with the product owner and the team. So the product owner wanted the team to feel completely safe without any sort of fear of judgment. And then they could say whatever they want. And then that information went back to the product owner anonymously to say, these are the things that were discussed.
Wow.
I've only seen that once.
So Goodwin, I'm sorry, I can't see that well. Go ahead.
Okay. So he kind of got, I normally kind of start, even though there's 5 stages of setting the stage, I kind of have icebreakers just to set and make sure I have psychological safety and start with icebreakers. Sometimes I even play music sometimes just to get the room in order. And then we try as much as possible to gather information about what we're doing, how I'm doing it. I try as much as possible not to do the same retro every other week so that I can remove redundancy and everybody the same question all the time. And so, and then after that, we'll kind of put the room in stage so that we can start talking about it. And then if I'm going to divide people in rooms, I start putting them in rooms. If it's virtual, I'll start putting people in rooms so that I can have a broader discussion. If not, depending on what type I'm doing. So there was a time I just did something that I saw on the news, think, share, and write. And that way I divided teams into 6 and put them in different rooms and just let them gather information, talk to each other, and give me to action topic that we can decide. And then we generate all the insight that we need, all the stuff that work well, those that didn't really work well. Then we decide who we are going to hold on. Because normally I find out that every time we have action items and we just treat it just like action items, they're not really treated well. And every time I decide to take it up, it means like I'm actually giving them. So what we do is that we have a retro champion who watch that retro and we'll put it on Jira so that we'll make sure that those action items are done, and then finalize the retro and close and then call for another day, call for adjournment.
Awesome.
That's what I do.
Awesome. Anyone else?
Yeah, Rick, something we would do occasionally from time to time was, you know, how companies normally have, you know, if you're an engineer 1, what it takes to be an engineer 2 or to be an engineer 3 and 4, you know, architect, those types of roles. We would actually go through those descriptions the company had, you know, on one of the retrospective weeks and say, okay, you know, here's what we did. And then people in the group would say, oh, you know, here's that characteristic you met for that next level and where you're at. And that helped a lot for review time because those retrospectives, everybody could say, oh yeah, that's right. You know, you showed leadership in this area or you did this particular thing. And everybody could make notes about that. And it's kind of like knowing you're kind of like, this is the exam you're going to be judged against, right? And here you've got answers for the exam that you're developing every week. And it helped you build this kind of repertoire of things. So when your annual review came around, you had a lot of things you could point to say, you know, here's what I did. And you also knew when you were meeting the, you know, somewhat non-precise criteria of some of those, you know, sort of different levels of what, you know, when you were meeting that, because our boss was part of that meeting. So that might be an idea of things to do on a retrospective week, is to kind of recap and say, okay, this is where people did well and how they met the criteria for the next level for their promotion.
Awesome. Thank you, Ray. Anybody else? Any special retro that you've done that no one's ever heard of?
Well, I was going to answer your first question. So one of the other things was that we always like to do was make sure that we started by saying, how did we do relative to the sprint goal? So that the discussion now is about how did we do collectively and less about what happened or less about individuals and so forth. So that was that just created a focal point.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? So let me ask you a question. I want to get into the safe environment now. Okay. So I heard about working agreements. Somebody said something about working agreements. What else can we do, and how do we get them to feel safe? What are some techniques you guys use? What are you doing to understand whether this? First of all, how do you know whether it's safe or not? What are you doing to understand that? Who can give me that? How do you know you have a safe environment or not?
Hey, Rick, I'll take that one.
Go for
it. So a technique that I use, especially now, like in the remote world, is I'll do a poll, like an anonymous poll, and kind of see where folks are at, like a 1 to 5, 5 being how safe do you feel, and I kind of get a gauge to how safe everyone feels. I mean, now typically we'll do this when I'm retroing like a group that I don't know, or they don't know me. I'm just asked to facilitate. And so that's a technique that I'll use sometimes, a polling.
So I love that. And think about what that would give you. It would give you a sense. Remember, you as a facilitator, what is that going to give you? What would you do if they say they're a 1, which means that they're not safe at all? How would that change your technique retrospecting that group? Talk to me.
Yeah,
Saba, what would you do if everyone's a 1 and you're about to retro? How do you handle that?
I was shaking my head, hoping that somebody would answer that because I want to know somebody else's answer.
All right. Sorry, who else want to answer that?
I know, but I mean, Andres did it well. I mean, he needs to have that. I mean, he needs to have a qualitative review before the meeting so he can be on top of the issues that it could happen at the meeting. So and that's perfect.
I love it, Rocky, but the question is more, you just did a survey and you had 10 people in the room and you asked them from 1 to 5, 1 meaning you're afraid half to death to talk here, that there's no way you'll share anything. 5 means I'll share anything with anybody, and everyone puts a 1. How the hell do you proceed from there? What do you do? Talk to us, coaches. Anybody out there? How do you work that?
Well, my first thought is that you do not address that issue. You need to do some exercises that will create conversation. They'll start breaking down the walls. If you bring it up, you're not going to get anywhere. So it's just, you got to get away from doing whatever you were going to do and find some activity that everybody can do so that they start having to interact in a safe way.
Right, because what happens is you're going to intimidate the person, and already they're telling you something that is completely negative. So it's about building a safe environment again and identifying everything, but it's more of, just an easing into the conversation. So I agree.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Marcelo.
You mind if I share something though, Rick?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to take away the screen from you for a minute. Okay.
Go for it.
But I will give it back. Okay. This is like a story. There are 1,000 stories in the Naked City. Well, there are literally thousands of retrospective formats. In my experience, and I've kind of talked to both of the people who wrote the book Retrospectives, Diana Larson and Esther Derby, and I've come to recognize that these 4 elements are in common at a minimum in every retrospective. Firstly, safety, to think, speak, and express yourself. Truth about what happened, what's happening, and what isn't happening. Honesty with what your needs are being met and aren't being met. And then empathy for yourself. Okay, don't be hard on yourself. You're not perfect, so stop trying to be perfect. Okay, stop trying to expect the people in your team to be perfect. And what's more, stop trying to expect the people outside of your team to be perfect. Okay? And lastly, presume that everybody who's here is coming in with a positive intent to try to get something better out of this circumstance. Okay? So if everybody is a 1, one of the things that you could do is ask yourself, okay, well, what out of some of these different vectors are making it a 1? Can you express yourself? Can you tell the truth when you're expressing yourself? Can you be honest about what you're going to say? Okay. And is it empathetic to yourself, the people around you, and the people outside? Okay. And so you could start by asking people to ask themselves that question. Are we coming in with our own positive intent, or are we coming in with negativity? Because your own negativity, by the way, contributes to that 1's EPS score or NPS score that you just gave yourself. Okay. So in other words, what I'm saying is start with yourself.
Beautiful. Go ahead, Marcelo.
So I take a different approach because Marcelo's right. And ideally that's what you want. And that's the discussion you want to have. But now you got a situation where everybody in the room, nobody wants to talk and nobody trusts anybody else. And nobody's going to go first. So what you got to do is you got to get them to start someplace. Where are you going to start? Let's first of all be objective. We're not going to talk about anybody else who's here. We're not going to say anything bad or good. We're just not even going to talk about anybody. We're just going to talk about stuff. And the thing you can ask is, what is something that you do feel safe talking about? And just start talking and get a discussion going. And you got to bring them along slowly. It's not going to happen in just one retro.
Exactly. I echo. Building a safe environment takes time.
So Art, great point. Marcelo, great point. So someone said earlier about working, because I want to complement that to say, what are the working agreements? Does anybody want to share the working agreements that you had that maybe could also share, and get that dialogue talk, expressed? Does anybody have a good working agreement for retros?
It was Humberto.
We're gonna pick on somebody. Don't mention nobody's name. That's just wrong. See? That's
Sure. I guess. Sure. Single me out.
I guess. Yeah, you put him on the spot, Rocky.
I mean, nothing formal comes to mind, but certain things like having anonymous feedback. I do like using Fun Retro because it is anonymous, but then it kind of doesn't become anonymous at a certain point, because when we want to discuss the item further and trying to get to the root of whatever we want to learn about, then people feel safe enough to discuss it. So I'm not sure if that's kind of like an indirect working agreement. So no formal ones kind of come to mind. It's more like this is how it's set up. We we use certain tools. We have certain people as a part of the meeting that feel comfortable there, and then of course there are people that don't contribute as well, and that's also part of the challenge of being a Scrum Master, to kind of like get that engagement and get that interaction going.
Love it. Thank you. Anyone else? Any formal working agreement that you want to share?
The people I work with are going to kill me, but here's an actual acting working agreement. It's actually literally not done. This is hot off the press. They're actually working on this as we speak. Okay. And this comes to them every retrospective so far, but it's a work in progress. It's understanding what's cool, what's not cool, what we need to have a kangaroo court, and then consequences. And you might notice, because I am part of this team, is, hey, you mess with me, you got to give me codfish croquettes because I'm a Spaniard and I like codfish croquettes. So we have to figure it out. Okay. And obviously you want to inject some fun into this, because I don't really know how some of these consequences are going to work given COVID. But I suspect that some people are going to have some serious debts to pay when we go back to we're working in the office. Okay, but notice some of the things that are there: not trusting each other, not cool; lack of information, not cool. In other words, your working agreement should express some of the things that I said: safety, truth, honesty, and empathy for each other. Okay, so
I love that, Marcelo. Great.
It's just a model. It's not perfect.
It's still a great start. That was really good, especially when he mentioned consequences. I don't know how many of you guys actually remember that column, because that is something that always comes up. Like, okay, so what if we're late? Okay, so what if we don't come onto a meeting on time? There's never the discussion about consequence. It's an interesting, session there. So a couple things that I would do. So I like the idea. You got a survey and you got a bunch of ones. Okay, so that means they're comfortable enough to tell it to you on a survey. So that's already a start, because most people won't. The people that are actually really unsafe, they won't even tell you that they feel unsafe. So that's actually a win for me, just people saying that they're a 1. So that's bold. So the next question is the survey the right tool? Will they feel more comfortable saying things in a survey? And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get to where you need to get to, because there could be a lot of stuff and no one wants to talk about it, but at least it opens the door to reality. Now, what I do when I do coaching, I don't like the idea of pointing fingers. So I normally talk about, what do you need to improve in? What do you, that way it's no longer controversial. When you start talking about yourself, that's it. It's more like, I need to do this better. If you can turn the page for them to start thinking in that direction. And then once you start that point, there might be pain points just within those conversations that you can address as a group. So this is what I do. Great. We all have these specific pain points. Spectacular. Now, what are you all going to do to help each other out? Now you just flipped it on them. You just flipped it. First, they were about to argue with each other. This is them arguing. Now you just flipped it. You said, he admitted that this is a problem. He admitted that he has a problem. How are you all going to help each other out so that you can help each other? That's a different ballgame. So I try to flip that in that sense. Now, I also look for leaders in the group. So when I see a lot of ones and there's a leader, I have some really good conversation with the leaders and say, wait a minute, you're a leader here. You have to step up. This is your point to step up. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be the one that's saying, I will take accountability for what I did. These are things. That way you get some other people to kind of start that ball rolling. I've also done things where I paired people. It's amazing how much strength you get when you actually create smaller pods, if you want to call it. Because the bigger group might be intimidating, but as soon as you have a small group, the things that come out of that were like, wow, I never expected them to actually speak up. But I hate to say this, but peer pressure, having someone else say the same thing you're thinking, now it's a little bit, your chest gets a little wider and you can actually speak up. So I also do that to try to like get the ball rolling with that. But it's all about the positive way you're doing this. I do not want to have a session where it's all about crying. That destroys anything you're trying to achieve in a retro. So it's all about leaving the retro in a very positive, we're all here together, we're all going to commit to this, we're all going to make progress. And what else do I do from a retro to try to make it more, I love the fun. You guys mentioned all the fun activities and all that stuff. Those are really, really essential because, and then I ask them, how do you want to retro? I think many times as coaches, we think we know it all, but have you ever relinquished that belt, and say, hey, how would you guys like to have a retro? It's an interesting thing. They come out with amazing different ideas that you would have probably never thought of. I've actually had the opportunity to say, okay, so how about if you run the retro? You know, why don't you let the team one time, hey, you run it, take it out. Or does it hurt your feelings to do that? Do you have a little ego if they do that, huh? Would you feel uncomfortable? I don't know, it's another way of looking at it. It's just something to think through it. Are you actually making progress that you need to make with these? So I do start, like Andres told you earlier, with doing like that safe environment, because I think that's essential. But there's more to safety, right? What do they say that you need to have to build trust? Let's go with the foundation. How do you build trust? Who can help me with that? What are some factors that need to be in place for you to build trust? And Marcelo mentioned a couple of them, but I'm curious more, what would you think?
Well, the first thing you need to have is respect. If you don't
I
have
love
respect,
it. Respect is a strong one. And I hear that all the time when I retro. I hear people say, you don't have respect. I love it. What else would you do to build trust?
If you really want to build trust in a team, go out and shoot guns together.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. And he actually
NRA
wasn't, he was actually in a team where they actually did that together. It was really crazy, but they actually shocked us because we heard
You
about it.
trust each other when they got guns. The airing of grievances happens very real.
Okay.
you gotta be related to Bruce D'Amico from Insurance.
I think it starts by being humble and being
I
vulnerable.
love that. I love that. Great job.
Psychologically, there's an exercise, Rick, where you build trust is for the person to actually stand behind the other person, and for that person standing in front of the person to completely let go. Woo! And it's a form of building trust.
You want to laugh? I'm going to give you a personal thing, but do not tell Regina. Okay? Do not tell Regina this. Whatever you do not tell Regina.
Wait.
We won't tell Regina.
Pause the recording.
Do not record. Make sure you pause this part of it. But I actually, when I was dating her for the first, few months, I actually did that silly exercise with her. I was like, hey, Regina, why don't you do me a favor? Turn around and why don't you just jump and I will catch you. I'm not going to answer whether she fell back or not. I'm not going to answer that, but it was an exercise I did. Yes, I'm crazy.
Yeah.
What else?
Very powerful psychologically.
I also think the 5 values of Scrum of commitment, courage, focus on openness also plays into retro.
I love that. Great job. Saba, you were raising your hands?
Yeah, actually, I want to challenge the submit yourself, like the exercise of falling back. I mean, submit yourself to the goodwill of another is perfect, but just because you physically trust somebody doesn't mean that you want to open your soul and heart to them.
That is true. That is true. Good point. Thank you, Saba. Anyone else that please help me establish trust? Come on. Yes.
Okay. Well, basically, thinking about other people's opinion doesn't actually matter. You don't want to make other team members to feel like, their answer is invaluable. It's all about contribution and feeling safe, and trying to be on the same page. To make sure we are able to have an easy sprint. And there should be snacks or a game puzzle, a card going around in circle and laughing, and so that people don't feel stressed about thinking too much.
Snacks, food, right to your stomach. I love it. Great job.
What about keeping your word?
Whoa, I like that. I like that. I tell you, so many retrospectives has gone bad.
I'll piggyback on that one with ethics.
I love it. I love it. But just want to conclude on that one. I've seen so many retrospectives go bad where you do these retrospectives, you come up with 3 items, and you never get them done. And it's never of high priority, and you don't commit to the work. Why would I care about going to a retrospective ever again? What I'm wasting my time. I got time. I got to develop stuff.
Okay.
Anybody else on building trust?
May I ask a question?
Yes, Patrice.
So I just started a new position as a Scrum Master, and the previous Scrum Master has been gone for several months. And the IT manager has been keeping the the team's running on projects. However, she's kind of been doing minimal because she's spread too thin, right? She's an IT manager. So here I am coming in, and I'm told you need to do retrospectives. Okay, they don't know me, I don't know them, and I'm expected to next week, go in there and get them to talk. So how about if you guys try to help me think through that one?
I love it. I love it. So you're getting to know a group for the first time, which is fine. We all do this.
In the middle of projects. In the middle.
So I love it. Still, let's keep it positive. So right now, your voice sounds stressed, but that's okay. We all go through this. So the first thing you want to make sure is you breathe and you let go, because you can do this. Okay. First of all, you got to understand where remember, it's all about empathy, right? You need to understand first of all where they're at. Are they going to come in like frustrated because they don't have time? They're in the middle of the project and they're frustrated, and or do you see the opportunity for them to come in a very positive, like, hey, we need to get better. So you need to get to know your people. Everyone, when they first start, it's all about setting a connection, making sure you understand them and where they're coming from. So what I do is I look for a common denominator. So I'll have activities where we actually look for something that we can really relate to, and that's the building block. And we start building our relationship that way. But retrospectives don't have to be scary. It could be just getting to know each other to start with. Don't get stressed out. It's about making small tweaks. Don't try to boil the ocean. It's all about making small adjustments so that we get better. And what I normally like to do with people, especially the first time, is to say, hey guys, it's not about where you're at today. It's not about that. Get rid of that. Get that out of your mind. Let's trend upward. Let's just trend upward. That's my only goal. My goal is, you're here. How do we get a little bit better? And we're all here together, right? And I'm partnering, and I need to get better too. That's where that's the stage you need to make sure that you got to have confidence. You got to have fun. You got to read like you've never read before. And I don't mean read a book. I mean, read faces, read gestures, read body language. You need to really absorb them. And sometimes you need to just shut up and just let them hear them out, because you're actually learning too. This first retro, you're going to absorb probably 10 times more than they are. So you better be alert. Your brain should be firing in 50 cylinder so that you can actually observe the room. Set the environment, make sure that they feel comfortable, make sure that they, but don't go overboard on it. Keep it simple. That's my quick suggestion. I'm sorry I talked very quickly on that. I tried to give you some feedback. Did you have any other question on that? We can let other people also speak as well. Do you have any other questions on that?
I'm sharing what I like to do when I first meet members is basically give them a user manual to me, and then I ask them for their user manuals to each one of them, so that I know how to use what I have from them. I know what their ground rules are, their okays, their not okays. Basically, it's the rules for interacting with each other. And you can even do that without having a working agreement. As a matter of fact, usually having that user manual makes making a working agreement even easier. Okay.
I love that.
I want the Marcelo user manual. That'd be awesome.
That thing's a book.
I'd pay for that.
It's a book like this.
How much time do you have, Joe? And by the way, I got to give a shout out, because I promised him I would give him a shout out. As a friend of mine who is an agile coach at Lego, of all places. Yeah, he's the guy who taught me this. Is when you meet a new team, give them your user manual. Let them know how you work.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. I like that.
Don't also forget emotional intelligence. That's kind of what we're talking about, right?
Right.
Yep.
So go in there with confidence, enjoy the moment, get to know them. We're all in it together, and listen to them. And I don't know if that's the only meeting you're going to have, but you're probably going to have other abilities to read how they're feeling. That way you can observe. sometimes people like to get interviews with other people before they go in there. I sometimes think that might put a lot of bias on you. You got to be careful because sometimes you want to just absorb it. But I have seen people say, okay, let me go talk to the management group just to see what they're saying. Because it is something you still want to know, but you can't use it in a sense where it influences you. But it's still data points you want to capture. Like, what is management feeling are the biggest pain points? What is your business, your customer thinking the biggest pain points? And then hearing them out and see if they're still mentioning that stuff. There could be gaps there that you're going to have to figure out. But don't kill yourself the first take. All right? Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right, awesome.
Point out, so all the great advice that we've heard is all based on certain assumptions. And so the first thing you need to do is figure out what your assumptions are and validate them and ask the team, what are their assumptions about you? What are their assumptions about this? What do they think people think of them? So you got to get to the truth, and then you can have honesty and trust.
That's awesome, Paul. And that's why I asked for a user manual. What you just said is precisely why that user manual is invaluable to you. You don't have to be a Scrum Master. You just have to be a human.
Human? We got humans? What the? Awesome, guys. Great feedback. Any other feedback for Patrice? All right. So, again, we talked a lot about the retrospect. We talked a lot about, understanding how it is and new people coming in a safe environment. Did we decompose safe enough? Did we decompose what that meant? So I think that's also an interesting thing to just define safe environment so that you can get people saying their own words. This is what I mean by being safe. This is what I mean by having that. So that's also a nice little manifesto, or however you want to call it, that, hey, this is what that remanates. So I would also encourage doing something like that. Anything else that you would do to work and to create that safe environment? Anybody else want to give some suggestions?
Not point out, so when you're conducting the retrospect, not pointing out, as I put in the chat, whether the team is failing in a certain area, but rather present them as opportunities that have been identified, not weaknesses.
So look at it in a positive way rather than trying to.
Always look at it in a positive light.
I love it. I love it. What I have though, I'm going to give you my own picture of a high performing team, and some people don't like it, but it's what I've seen in my life. I have not seen that many high performing teams. I know that's very depressing as a coach, not seeing high performing team, but I guess once you see one, then you're like, no one's ever compared to that. So it's like, maybe the next time I'll see something and say, oh, that wasn't really high performing. This is really high performing. That's a label. We all know that. But what I saw was an amazing, strong conversations. They were having they would not leave a meeting until everything was said to the point where we're all on board with this. Let's make this happen. And it wasn't that everyone had to be in the same, like some people could disagree, but when we all made a decision, we all made it together. But it was strong. And people go, if you had the CIO come in that room, they would actually tell the CIO.
Don't you feel that that is actually an...
Say that again. Sorry, Flor. Flor, you there? I missed you, Flor. What'd you say? What'd she say? Anybody got a word? What are we doing? You're breaking up. I can't hear you. It might be me. Am I having problems or is it her?
Maybe she was trying to ask, like, what does strong conversation mean? Like, what?
You said that you have to get there. If you're
still not picking up what she's saying.
Your team is not matured enough.
So I'm assuming she's where you got to make sure
the team needs to be matured enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's different maturity levels. And we're trying to work to where they feel they're really comfortable having debates, but it's not about personal debates. It's not about, attacking me. It's about just having a conversation to solve the problem. And it's passionate about solving the problem. But they're very respectful, and they have real strong ground rules that if people don't oblige by that, you could see that tension. Like I said earlier, if you had the CIO come in there, they would actually say, this is a private meeting and we're working toward this right now. They were that strong, they were that determined to be empowered, right? To be empowered and to feel like they had this. So again, rarely have I seen that kind of debate. And then as soon as they left, they were all laughing and they were all major friends after. It wasn't like anything was kept against them. So Bob, I was actually part of the VP3 team, and seeing that was one of my biggest inputs there. I don't know if you're there, Bob, just to let you know.
Yeah, I've lived that for a couple of years, so you're exactly right. But it took a lot of work, took a lot of energy and a lot of dedication to get there and stay there. But once they made it look easy, but it was not. I know how much work it took.
If I remember from some of the conversations you guys have, these stickies are some of the things I remember you guys sharing with me before. Is that, whole team decisions, conversations with candorous language, or language where you spoke with high candor to each other. And when you had differences, you left them at the table. They were there. They were just left at the table, because the team didn't need to hang on to them. As I ever understood it.
Yeah, very, very powerful. All right. Anything else from a safe environment? I want to make sure anyone else that wants to state anything related to a safe environment, to make sure that we've dove deeper into that. We have companies right now that I'm helping. You got NPS score that you might want to capture so that you can actually get some of those numbers to show that you're improving. I force the leaders. So when Andres said earlier about this is the score they have as a safe environment, I then put that stress on the leaders and say, leaders, your environment is not up to speed yet. You should be improving those numbers, because that's really what makes you an effective leader. See, now it's flipped. It's putting the pressure, and then the leaders have to respond to say, what do I need to do to help that environment prosper? So that's really the gist of how I wanted to share with you guys the safe environment, what we're doing. But it really is, if you can't get that safe environment, you really don't have the engagement that you need to really have a continuous improvement framework, to really get your team to the next level. So you got to have those strong conversations. It has to permeate throughout the whole organization. Okay. So it's 7:21. I want to make sure I close this well. Any other questions before we close today's session?
I do have one more question. So say you've worked and you've built a safe environment and it's good. Something goes wrong, there's a conflict, and now your safe environment is no longer safe. How do you work that back into getting it to a safe environment and resolving the conflict and getting past that?
I can tell you from relationship experiences in my life, you have to work 10 times as hard to get back to that where you had it before. Whenever time you lose that, you fell back, way back, and you got to work. You got to show. Now you got to show what you didn't do before. You got to show, look, I am truly, again, 10 times fold. You got to show the trust. Look, I'm trusting you with this. Look, I'm trusting you with this, so that you can hopefully earn that back. But it takes time. It's not easy. So what I do from leaders' perspective is, again, they need to set the stage to try to create that environment. You can't. The only time those things really have a big impact is leaders coming in and diving into teams and hurting them. As soon as a leader who doesn't realize just by their title, they intimidate. This is the fallacy that people don't realize. You're my manager. You're my boss's boss's boss. You're intimidating, whether you like it or not. Whether I fake it and think like, no, you're not intimidating. it's a job. You get paid, you get raises, all those things, start, working your mind. So how do you get them, involved in helping you out? Mm-hmm. Great question, Joe. Anybody else? All right.
So
go ahead.
Did I really have a safe environment, assuming the people didn't change, if it comes in question?
That's a great question. Like, is safe forever, ever, right? Or is it reality and we're all going to have hiccups in our life? Like, I don't think there is a perfect safe environment. Like, you will have things that disappoint you and that didn't work out the way you planned and happens. Look, I think the biggest thing is how well do you bounce back? As a real high performing team, is things happen now, do we adjust, do we grow, and do we figure it out more? So I don't ever see a safe environment always being like that. There are going to be some rough edges. It's going to happen.
Yeah. Are we confusing safe with harmonious?
Oh man, no. Oh man, no.
Well,
no.
Hey. Like, it could be. I guess my point was there could be a lot of negative conflict going on, but that the fact that conflict is taking place kind of proves that it's still a safe environment.
Yes. The ability to drop an F-bomb, you guys didn't see it because I didn't show it to you, but the ability to drop an F-bomb is in that working agreement you guys saw.
and to understand each other. I think the hardest thing for a safe environment, I'm going to tell you very, very clear on this, is a tough one. Sometimes you got to understand that people don't speak the same way. And it's hard because you expect them to speak a certain way, but people come from different backgrounds. And as long as you have positive intent, which Marcelo said earlier, which is hard, people can't get that. They're like, this person said these things, and if I take it literally, I would think he hates me. If I just see through it and say, wait a minute, his real meaning is this, and I know him, he just doesn't know how to say things properly. And that's been his problem for a long time. We know that. But his root, like Bob, I love you, Bob. But Bob sometimes says things to me, I'm like, but I know the intentions behind the scenes is the most humbling intentions in my life. I will never lose humbleness when it comes to Bob and what he's really meaning behind some of the things. Forget it. He's got me. So I think that's the hard one for people, because they want people to change, and some of them just don't change fast enough. And you're expecting, no, you're supposed to talk this way. You're supposed to talk this way. It's a tough one. Guys, I love this topic. This is out of all the sessions that I do related to retros, it's what we do every day. We retro every day, and we find ways of getting better and learning and growing and working through things together. So I thank you for giving me the time to spend on this awesome topic. I really appreciate that. I think, and as you noticed, it was all about us talking together, and that's how I run my retros. It's not about me trying to own the retro. It's how do I get other people involved to grow and to figure things out. That also makes it a very successful. And I hope you guys had a good time today. I certainly did. We like to end it with a nice little picture. So what we normally do is we ask everyone, please turn on your cameras, and we're going to just take a quick snapshot. And the whole snapshot is going to be shared at LinkedIn. So Nelu, I need somebody to help me to at least take a snapshot. Guys, can we turn on your videos at least?
Can we stop sharing, please?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, we can.
Hope you saved it.
So just turn on your videos again. So the act is retrospecting. So I know, where do you think retrospect comes from? So maybe that's the symbol. Wherever you think retrospect comes from. Like,
from the
what
heart.
Symbol would you reflect? As in, where does it come from, right? And say that, and then Nelu is going to take a snapshot. Nelu, just tell us 3, 2, 1, and ready for the snapshot. I finally have my 2 hands, so I can use 2 hands.